whether it was. Wait, now let me finish.
Hello everybody, my name's Paris.
Hi, I'm Selina.
And we are Love Uncut. So this week we wanted to talk about a topic that has definitely gripped our nation and gripped those in the United States around the world.
Kind of the world, yeah.
Meghan and Harry and their side of the story in terms of their falling out with the royal family and their eventual relocation into the United States. So we're just going to talk about our general perception of their relationship so far and how we thought, you know, going into that interview they had with Oprah, which I'm sure like 10 million people watched it, something silly like that. It's the highest non-Super Bowl rating, which is a big thing because the Super Bowl is like a massive sport event. And then our feelings, you know, coming out of it, did they change? And, you know, I guess why all of this matters even.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say that this is just our opinion. This is not like done after hours of research into the royal family and Harry and Meghan. It's just our opinion based on what we've seen.
It's cultural commentary.
Yeah.
There's no scientific way to be right about this situation, even though there are people passionately arguing on all sides. You know, the pro-royalists, the anti-Harry and Meghan, the pro-Harry and Meghan, people in between, people that don't know.
People that don't care.
And exactly.
I guess they wouldn't be arguing, would they?
They might argue with people. Stop asking me about it. That's what they might argue about. There's been a YouGov survey which is asking the general public, from what you have read and heard, do you think the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, which is Harry and Meghan, have been treated unfairly or fairly by the royal family? Okay, so you've got 32% of the general population who believe that they have been treated fairly by the royal family. You've got 36% that don't know whether they've been treated fairly by the royal family. And you've got 32% who believe that they were treated unfairly by the royal family. So
it's literally like equal all the way around, isn't it?
It's very, very equal, and you've got people passionately arguing all sides, even the don't know side.
But I feel like that's quite, I'm not surprised that there's quite a large amount of don't knowers, because usually everyone just thinks you're either for or against. They always forget about the people in the middle, and those people in the middle could be like people who don't feel that they don't know enough, so they don't want to comment, people who don't care, as we said before, people who are afraid to have a position on it, or who just feel like ignorance is bliss, like they don't want to get involved. I feel like that middle group is, was that the largest of all of them, really? 36, 32, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Middle group don't know, yeah. And there is a divide though in terms of age groups. So basically, the younger you are, the more likely you are to think that Meghan and Harry have been treated unfairly. So if you're 18 to 24, 61% believe that they've been treated unfairly. 24 to 49, 40% believe that they've been treated unfairly. Then it goes lower, 50 to 64, 20%. Believe they've been treated unfairly, and 65 plus, 15%.
15. I'm not surprised again, because I think the older you are, perhaps the more invested you were or are in the royal family, and that kind of maybe more traditional view of, you know, you just deal with it, you just do what you're meant to do, you stick to the script, that kind of thing. And the younger you are, perhaps the more rebellious you are against those ideas, or you see things differently. I think obviously, you know, being young means that perhaps you don't have as much life experience and wisdom, so maybe that's an element of it. But I do think that younger people nowadays, so maybe, you know, that whole 18 to 40 block, are a lot more aware about things like mental health and more open to hearing about it, whereas the older you are, it's kind of like, oh, you know, stiff upper lip, just, you know, get on with it, you'll be fine. Do you know what I mean?
There's a correlation. Yeah. There is a correlation, and yeah, there's been popular broadcasters and people in workplaces who have said, you know, oh, this new generation is so soft. So there is a correlation towards that. Yes, the younger you are, the more likely you are to say that they have not been treated fairly by the royal family. Okay, so, you know, with all those caveats said, let's just kick it off then from our perspective. Now, Harry and Meghan's interview, as I remember, it's called My Truth, is it not?
I can't remember, that's really bad.
But again, that's just something that explains, you know, it's from their perspective. So it's all very, you know, it's all very subjective at the end of the day.
But I feel like that's just life, isn't it? Unless there was a fly on the wall that was following them the whole time, and the fly on the wall was interviewed as part of... Do you know what I mean? You're never gonna get 100% objective kind of facts from people who are emotionally involved in a narrative. Like, if you interviewed Meghan, even her feelings might be slightly different, or her take on things might be slightly different to that of Harry. He grew up in, you know, he even said so many things from his perspective which were different to her perspective. The bottom line was the same, but their approach was slightly different.
Yeah, naturally.
You know, and the same way, the person on the opposing side of the situation, I think, is going to have a completely different point of view. So,
especially,
it's tough, isn't it? There's always two sides to the story.
Or three or four.
Yeah, in general. But I think just this interview for them seemed like quite a cathartic experience to actually give their side of the story, because at least in my opinion, it seems like they've been almost like stopped from doing that.
Yeah, I mean, when we were watching it, I remember you saying, I don't even think I've heard her speak, so, you know...
Yeah, but that's, I mean, I'm not seeking it out, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's not easy. It's not been easy for us to hear them speak, if you know what I'm trying to say. And yeah, I mean, very much I had my perspective coloured by what I'd seen on TV. So, you know, I'm not like a super pro-royalist, even though I'm British nationality. I've never felt that establishment is something that is there to represent, you know, particularly people like me that are part of the Commonwealth. You know, that thing's got its own problematic history which hasn't really been addressed. So I always had that distance in my mind, if you know what I'm saying.
So are you anti-royalist then?
Well, I mean...
anti-monarchy, whatever the term is.
I haven't really, you know, looked into it, but I would say that I don't believe inherently anybody's life is worth more than anybody else's, which appears to be the hierarchy that they are on. So the more you invest in that, the more you say, they're highborn, you know, and I'm lowborn, and all the things that come with that. As from my perspective of, you know, the Commonwealth, in terms of justifying the way that the empire was run and the brutality side of it, it was very much based on skin tone. So how can I invest in that, if you know what I'm saying, like to the fullest?
I feel like back in the day, terms like that were definitely used. Highborn, lowborn, and they used to like spin all this nonsense about, you know, it's God that's in charge of who's in the royal family, and God appointed me there as king, and all this kind of nonsense, when really it's just twisted to make, I guess, normal civilians feel like that person has a right to rule over them. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
I guess as someone that didn't grow up in this country and sort of either heard of the monarchy just on the news, or, you know, when you come for, you know, your holidays here, or eventually lived here, I always just felt it was like a historic, nostalgic concept, right, that was still around for the purposes of tourism and just, I suppose, maintaining this kind of British ceremonial pomp and circumstance that is affiliated with Britain. Do you know what I mean? Like, from an international perspective. I never really understood what they did apart from upholding that kind of view.
That feeling, that identity.
Yeah.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, and like, I do think there's an element of they're there to kind of bring the country together, you know, like all these jubilee things and royal weddings, and it's a way of trying to unify the country and focus on them, and, you know, this whole idea of Britishness and all of that. Which in a way is cool, I suppose. It's a way of being patriotic, but the problem with that is not everyone feels that connection, and perhaps as I said earlier, the younger generations aren't as invested in perpetuating that. Yeah. So it's an interesting one. Like, I know they do charity work, whatever, but I mean, if you're getting paid that much and you live in a, you know, bloody palace, and you can kind of, for all intents and purposes, enjoy a very rich and full life, at least on the face of it, then yeah, please go and do charity work and much more. But it seems like that's the face of it, and behind the scenes it's not as great as it looks. I think even in the interview, Harry said he felt trapped, and he thinks his dad and his brother are trapped within that. So obviously they're confines that you can't just do what you want, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I did go into that interview knowing that ultimately, yes, they had to be puppets. They had to put on a show to fulfill what Selina was saying in terms of the pomp and ceremony and the history and the tourism. You have to put on a show. But, you know, over the years there has been media reports showing some of the royals, you know,
a bit mad.
Yeah, and obviously recently there's a thing with Prince Andrew, which is still bubbling along.
Why is he still running around? Why is he gallivanting here and there and allowed to just be? I don't understand this. I mean, like, if you're gonna come for someone, British press, please come for him.
Well, you know, and then we've got obviously Harry. You know, he's basically grown up in the public eye, and he's definitely made mistakes, to say the least, in terms of, you know, fancy dress and things like that. And yeah, so I had a concept that there's someone always photographing them, and I didn't really know if I wanted that growing up as a kid. I didn't aspire to them though. I couldn't. You know, I didn't think they spoke for me. I didn't think that institution is a safe haven or a home for people like me and people who look like me.
So as a kid then, did you ever feel like, I don't know, because I guess as a little girl there was always everyone I was friends was like, they loved William or Harry. It's like, you know, everyone's dream to meet a prince and that kind of thing. As someone that maybe didn't grow up here, so it's like that fairy tale was kind of, I guess, quite dreamlike and whimsical, and it's sort of, maybe if you lived here, that fairy tale kind of, it just didn't, it was too realistic, because it's like they're in the same country as you. Do you know what I mean? Is that...
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go to Buckingham Palace with my family or anything. I think I'd pass it here and there when I go up to central London. But yeah, all these Americans and people like that camping outside to see the Queen and this kind of stuff. I just wasn't invested in it. And especially, you know, in this day and age, what you realise, even being on YouTube, as soon as you like criticise or you make a suggestion about a country and you suggest that it's anything less than perfect, suddenly you become an immigrant. Do you know what I mean? Suddenly you're not British. Suddenly go back home, these kind of conversations come into the mix. So if you can't speak freely without instantly being, you know, related back to somewhere that you've never been before, but your ancestors may be from there, how can you feel at home, if you know what I'm saying, if you ain't got the freedom of speech, which is a big debate point right now. So, you know, look, I don't personally know them, so I don't personally have anything against them. It's just an institution that they represent that I don't necessarily feel invested in. It's great to have a British passport when you're abroad, and the embassy can help you out, as I understand it. But apart from that, I mean, again, even that can get taken away at the last minute, in terms of like what's happened. There's a Windrush scandal where people who've lived there for 40-50 years have suddenly found themselves kicked out of the country back to Jamaica, and there's been some really sad stories. So the point is, your role, your British status is actually quite fragile, particularly from the Black British experience. It really can be quite a fragile situation. And, you know, as I understand it, the immigration office, when you're on the other side of trying to stay in the country, you know, the teeth get shown.
It just make you jump through all kinds of hoops and things. And I mean, one of our friends who's getting her, what is it called? Citizenship, I think it's called. Like, you have to go through all these, pay for all this stuff, like quite expensive, hundreds of pounds for every step of the way. You have to do tests. I mean, I was joking that I bet if a British person took the test, they wouldn't pass it, you know? Like, it's I think a lot of stuff is taken for granted, so I'm gonna definitely say that when you are a citizen of a Western country, there are definitely things that are taken for granted in terms of the quality of life, stability, infrastructure, just having things like someone is going to regularly come and take your bins, having constant electricity. I'm not saying that, you know, things should be like this for everyone around the world. You should all have a standard, you know, of living, but unfortunately things aren't like that. So I guess I definitely take on board what you're saying about that there is an element of fragility, particularly, you know, if you fall within a certain category of a British person. But I still think that being in this country has a lot of benefits that shouldn't be taken for granted by everyone, you know. So that's what I'll say. But
yeah,
there is 100% issues in terms of race, and you know, when people picture a British person, what do they picture?
Yeah.
And if you don't meet that picture, then unfortunately people just assume that you don't belong here and say horrible things, which is not right, and which, you know, clearly came up in the interview. But we're going on a lot of tangents, so let's come back.
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well, look, there are poor people in England, you know, there are food banks in England, and the usage of the food banks has increased, and the UN recently did a report explaining that for the first time, you know, they're donating food to the United Kingdom. So all that glitters isn't gold, and obviously in a democracy you'd think that everybody has a voice, however it is very selective. But yeah, let's go on to this. So look, okay, so first of all, my position on Harry and Meghan in terms of watching their wedding, I was like just rolling my eyes at this whole big princess ceremony. I was like, why all this ornate ceremony? I don't really care for it whatsoever.
But they have to do it. It's not part of the contract.
It's not real, you know. So yes, it's part of the contract, but it doesn't mean I'm going to look at this show and get sucked into it. And I was kind of treated like the bad guy at the time when Selina and I think it was your mum as well, who were watching it. And then I was just like, I don't care, like, I don't care. You know what I mean? And this is the royal wedding of the century or some kind of crap. And I was just like, oh my God, like, it's just so much fuss. I don't get it. I don't really get weddings in general that are all about...
grumpy.
I don't get weddings in general that are all about all this pomp and all this kind of different stuff. But
it's their wedding, like, if
it wasn't their wedding,
you didn't have to watch it.
You just said they have to do it. Clearly it wasn't their wedding then, was it?
But it's still like, it's about them. You know, whether it was, wait now, let me finish. Whether it was just about them two or it was about the whole royal family, and you know, they had to do XYZ to meet XYZ, they still did try to put their stamp on it. They had that choir, she obviously got a specific preacher, she got that amazing guy who played the cello. That was beautiful. Those are all her touches. Those would not have happened in a usual royal family. So whilst yes, it is part of the contract, she did try to put and I say she because I'm pretty sure it came from her. I don't think Harry would have had the kind of ideas to come up with that off his own back. Yeah, I think she did try as much as she could to put her stamp on it. And they did say that they had a union in the interview 3 days before.
Yeah, when they said that, I was like, oh, okay, I can respect that a lot more, because it's what it was. I was just seeing that, you know, her eyes, she looked like kind of happy, which she would on your wedding day, but it's like, I'm finally marrying a princess, like, as you say, every little girl's dream, and that's not reality. So I just don't like that Disney reality being perpetuated, because it messes people up.
But if you can't feel Disney on your wedding day, whether it is a small or big wedding, whatever, like, that's the day you're gonna feel Disney, because you're gonna be wearing what you want to wear, whether you're wearing t-shirt and jeans or you're wearing a big puffy dress. That is your day to feel Disney, because you should both be really happy in what you're doing. Like, in an ideal wedding situation, you should both be extremely happy in who you are as an individual, in who you are as a couple. It should be something you're both really excited about doing, and when it's done, it's like, you know, you're happy. You should be on cloud 9. I'm sorry.
No, you should be. No, I'm not saying you shouldn't be happy on your wedding day. I'm just saying you shouldn't root it in Disney. Disney's literally made up.
She was just smiling. Anyone is entitled to smile.
Cool. I'm just saying that a lot of people, as you say, you were a kid, you wanted, you know, the fantasy of being a princess and a queen and all these different things.
Yeah, that's what Disney tells you.
There you go. I'm just saying, rooting any part of your identity in that is a bad idea, especially when you look at the reality of, you know, the legal history, the cultural history of marriage. It's not an establishment that traditionally upholds the equal rights of women.
Make it what you want it to be.
Okay,
There
but
is
that
no
doesn't just
paper
happen.
that you sign that says the man must do this and the woman must do that. Make your vows what you want them to be. Make your marriage what you want it to be.
Yeah, sure.
You have
No,
that
I get that.
option
But
now.
you have that option now, like literally in the last 2-3 years. I mean, come on. And
What are you talking
and what I'm trying to say in
about?
terms of making vows your own, and also it's still controversial, for example,
You
not to
can't-
take.
you've
Let me
made-
finish. Sorry, it's still controversial, for example, not to take your partner's name for some men in 2021. That's a real thing. So we need to understand there's a history, and Disney doesn't talk to you about that bit. So I just feel like if you
have
can,
to talk to your partner about it.
if you can, fine. If you can separate out your happiness from Disney, all for it. But it just looked very Disney to me. And that, Disney ain't real, man. Disney World is a flipping theme park.
Let them have one day when they don't have to worry about the real world.
You can be happy in the real world, everybody. Don't think, oh, I have to be Disney or I have to be unhappy. No, you can be happy in the real world. That's what I'm trying to say.
But there's also stress in the real world. So maybe one day you want to opt out of that stress. And clearly she couldn't even opt out of that. People were making her cry during the whole process. And she's been the one, this really annoyed me. Basically, throughout after the wedding, this story came out, and she touched on it in the interview, that Meghan made Kate cry over a bridesmaid dress, and it was just a way for the press to make her look bad. And I mean, there's so many stories that if you compare like for like, the same thing that Kate did when she was pregnant, if Meghan did the same thing, she was Satan. When Kate ate an avocado, she was, praised. When Meghan ate an avocado, she was causing World War III. I mean, so this story about Meghan making Kate cry, in the interview, she basically, I can't remember who brought it up, Oprah or Meghan, but it came out that it wasn't Meghan that made Kate cry, it was Kate that made Meghan cry. And you could tell that, I mean, obviously Meghan wanted to get the truth out there. I think she was trying to do it in a diplomatic way, but obviously when you're saying someone made you cry, that's not going to make the other person look good. She did try and say that Kate apologized and that it's all sorted now, and she doesn't want to go over it too much because to her, she's forgiven her and it's fine. But my point is that, look, even like a wedding in itself has its stresses. Everyone's going to be stressed. So
Exactly.
Let someone enjoy their day. You know, whether it's the 3 days before one or the actual big crazy ceremony.
What do you mean let them enjoy it?
Let them enjoy it,
the report didn't let them enjoy it?
No, you.
I said you can enjoy your wedding, just don't attach it to no Disney stuff. That's all I'm trying to say. It's Disney that creates all this stress and expectation, which ends up with people making people cry and all this stuff. That's just the truth. If the wedding isn't 100% right, if the right people aren't there, if the dress, the flowers, it's Disney that messed up all that. It's not me, it's Disney that's the issue. And me pointing that out doesn't make me the issue. And this is the problem, even with critiquing this society. As soon as you point out, this is not really quite right, you're the problem, you're the negative. So I'm just saying, that's fine. It's a natural reaction, knee-jerk maybe. But we need to kind of allow things to be, allow institutions, structures and ways of thinking to be critiqued without simply reducing it to the binary of you're grumpy, you're anti, you're da-da-da. No, just allow things to tweak and be and evolve. That's what I'm trying to say.
You're trying to be Mr. Diplomatic.
Well, I know that a lot of people out there are going to agree with you.
I actually agree with what you just said. So yeah, that's cool.
It was lost.
But I feel that you have to also just let people enjoy their moment if that's what they both want. Whether to you it looks excessively Disney or not, if they're both on the same page, it really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks.
What?
But
go on, sorry.
No, it's cool. I think we should get back to the...
Yeah, and as you said, actually my guard went down a lot as soon as Meghan said, actually we got married secretly 3 days before. I had a lot of time...
to point that out to him to...
No, you didn't. I saw it in my own eyes and I felt my guard go down. And, I had a lot of respect for them for that reason, because again they weren't invested in all of that ornate Disney crap which Selina has said let them have. They didn't even want it. People are assuming that's what they want, and this is the thing with all these Disney situations, it's all very polished on the surface, but you never know, right? So and that's cool.
I said Disney can be whatever it is for whatever person. I literally said 5 minutes ago you can wear jeans and a t-shirt, and that was Disney. That
wasn't the wedding they had. So anyway, so that's...
Yeah, but that Disney was the one 3 days before. I literally said that.
No, the Disney... Okay.
That could have been their specific Disney. The big grand
Selina,
wedding could have just been what the royal family wanted them to do.
My
Their
critique,
Disney moment could have been the other wedding.
my level of critique and feeling when I was watching the wedding with you and your mum was not based on the thing 3 days before. That wasn't what was on TV. I started this conversation by saying to you that it was the wedding on TV that made me think, oh. So I'm not talking about 3 days before. I literally just said the 3 days before, which we found out about in the interview, was what put my guard down. Okay, so I don't really think that a wedding behind closed doors has any of the hallmarks of Disney anyway. Okay,
not for you, but for them it does, and that's my point. It's about the two people involved. You are focusing on your definition or someone else's definition of marriage. You're missing the point. It's about the two people and how they feel.
Well, it wasn't. That's why. Okay, so the one that we saw on TV, which I was rolling my eyes about, was not about them two. Otherwise, they wouldn't have felt the need to do a separate one 3 days before. And this is all just my perspective and my opinion, which we're all in. No, hope that's clear here. My whole thing is each to their own. And yeah, the less people involved in your marriage, the better. My perspective. Anyway, so. Yeah, my guard came down at that moment when she explained that they got married 3 days before. And you know what? My overall impressions are that it has been a very one-sided narrative. The media have said everything. Harry and Meghan, yeah, there's been a few legal challenges here and there, but we haven't been able to hear it from the horse's mouth and kind of judge how, I guess, genuine we can try and tell they're being. And it did feel quite genuine, and it felt like, I guess, a normal relationship. Harry was very protective over Meghan, and they put on a united front. And even if they did have issues behind the scenes, why is that any of our business? But I think because it's the royal family, it is our business almost, because people are very invested in this cultural, this institution. And I did get the sense before watching the interview that Harry probably used Meghan as a get out, the fact that there's this conflict. He's like, I'd rather resolve it, but if not, hey, I get to get out. And fair enough, because, marriages become political, legal things. It's not just about the love, it's who you're marrying. And in this situation, you're marrying an institution. And as Meghan said it, a family business. So look, I'm just going to say overall, after watching that interview, I came out more Meghan sympathetic. But yeah, I mean, you were obviously very pro.
I'm not pro anything. I just didn't
marriage.
think it was. I'm not pro anything. I just think if they wanted to get married, they wanted to get married. Good for them. Let them be happy. If they can't be happy within the confines of the royal family, then find where you can be happy. I don't think it's fair, the kind of press, particularly she received. I mean, there's a lot of stuff online, or if you speak to different people, saying that she's manipulative, she's narcissistic. She might be, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, not a doctor. I can't make that diagnosis. I don't know if narcissism is a personality trait or if it's a mental disorder. I don't know if that's the right terminology. But my point is that regardless of all those things, I don't think the press she received is fair. I don't think that, when a woman is pregnant, she should have to be dealing with all these things, because that can cause a lot of strain, not just on herself, but potentially on the baby too. I mean, I'm inclined to believe what she said about feeling, down. She even said suicidal during her time in England while she was pregnant, just because if you do feel, if that's not your expectation in terms of your life, you feel that, okay, you're going to marry this guy, you love him, we have to assume that, right, that they love each other and they both want the marriage. Again, a lot of conspiracy theories saying that therefore she forced him, or she knew exactly what she wanted and had a plan and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I can't comment on that. Not there. But my point is, they got married, they love each other, they're pregnant, people just let them enjoy the first few years of their marriage and their pregnancy. I don't see why there was just so much vitriol, is that the word, towards her. And no one stood up for it. I mean, again, I'll go back to Prince Andrew. It's almost like nothing has really been allowed to have been said about him in the press. There were a few articles, yes, there was that terrible interview where he just looked like a prat. But aside from that, there's not really been anything. And he's potentially a paedophile and he's just running around. I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. And then you have Prince William, who cheated on Kate. That wasn't allowed to be printed in this country. The royal family had a deal with the press where they wouldn't print anything. I mean, if you have that much control over the press, then why couldn't you have a little word with them saying, hey, take it easy on Meghan, actually a lot of what you're saying is unfair, look at how you treated Kate, or actually a lot of what you're saying is potentially racist, potentially, you know, it's just, as an international institution, the royal family should have been more on the ball. And so that's why I feel like, were they part of it, or were they happy with it? Were they happy that, you know, Kate was being made to look like an angel and Meghan was being made to look awful? So regardless of what kind of person she actually is, my problem is the approach of the institution with the press, considering they have all this power, but also how they responded to her cry for help. Whether you believe her cry for help was genuine or not, maybe that's not even the point. The point is that their response should have been, hey, this woman is struggling, let's see what we can do. And they both asked together, you know, and they felt that they weren't given the support they needed. And that's why they left. And I don't blame them. You know, I wouldn't want to feel how she said she felt. And then you couple that with all the other comments that were made about race, you know, how dark is your child going to be? And a lot of people are saying, oh, but it's like whenever any baby is born, it's like, oh, will they be blonde? If it's a mixed race child, will they have blue eyes or brown eyes? Or will they have curly hair? And it's like, okay, but that's context, you know, that's a conversation where people are excited about the birth and people are, you know, just trying to figure out and not plan, but like imagine, you know, it's an exciting conversation. If the context is someone is literally asking how dark your child is going to be, there's a...
Okay, so it was brought forward as a concern, basically.
Yeah, it's a concern. It's not a curiosity, right?
Yeah, but this is the thing with the relationship of race in this country. Like, as soon as you call things for what they are, you know, people just start gaslighting, deflecting, and it's just the same old story.
Or just getting defensive.
Well, it's just the same old story, and people have no idea. They don't want to read books. They don't necessarily want to listen to you. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, it was said to Harry, who isn't from a background, ethnic minority background, so if it felt like a certain tone for him to have to go and relay that to Meghan, then it was what it was. So
even he knew it wasn't right, and he even said he grew up in the royal family. You know, he was never exposed to having to understand what it means to face racism or any kind of ism, really. And he said that. He said himself he only really learnt about it when he was with Meghan. And really, when you look at Meghan, it's not even... She's like... She's the lightest mixed race person in the world. Do you know what I mean? So if she's receiving racism and all these kind of remarks belittling her for that reason, or call, you know, all these connotations of,
what does it say about everybody else? Which is what I was talking about in the first instance, in terms of being a citizen here. Am I really welcome? I mean, my mother's mother's generation actually came over here with British passports, feeling like a part of the situation, and they were shocked when they come onto the ground and realised that was just a myth. Whereas my generation, a bit more cynical, you know, critically thinking, and yes, it does show, it does reflect for the whole population. 3% of people in England that are, you know, of black heritage. This is how you guys see us. But again, because I'm British and culturally, I'm not surprised. So I think, look, in terms of the media, the way Harry actually broke it down, I think Oprah touched on that. Why didn't he tell them what to do? It's a push and pull relationship. You know, the media is everywhere and nowhere at the same time, and they do control public perception very heavily. The royal family and their strength is built on public perception, which the media have their claws into.
So people don't apply critical thinking.
Well, they almost can't, because the media is owned by a couple of 5 people or something. And
no, I mean people reading it, like they just consume a headline and that's it,
Yeah, and the media know that they have all that power, so therefore the royal family do have to appease them, and it is push and pull, and it's an arrangement because the media props up everybody else. They prop up the prime ministers, over the last 40 years, and they also prop up the members of the royal family. Good press is like gold dust. Doesn't make things real, but it controls the perception of things. So yes, I think even institution definitely stuck their neck out for certain other members of the royal family, as Meghan explained. But there's always a line for how far you can push it, and the media themselves, they're interested in upholding. They're interested in upholding white supremacy, and look. That doesn't go down very well when you say that in England, but that is what they are interested in. And therefore, why are they even going to care about these particular concerns, of racism that Meghan's felt, or mental health linked to that, or, why are they going to care? They're not going to care. It's just a world away from them. They're not accountable. The media is not accountable. There's no independent regulator. They run everything. If there really is a royal family, it's probably the media, if you know what I'm saying, in terms of, because at least with the royal family, if we can leverage critiques, it's against people, right? Very visible people. Whereas the media, even though they're all powerful, you can't win against them, and even prime ministers know that. So that's the relationship there. But yeah, I agree that basically the institution dehumanizes people. Even the senior royals are dehumanized, right? They have to just follow a role. You have to follow a perception. That's dehumanizing you. Of course it is. You can't go wherever you want. So of course they're going to dehumanize someone who might have, I think she's half black in her, and as a woman, of course they're going to dehumanize. It's all about the family structure. How many normal families, quote unquote, non-royal, will suppress people and allow people to be abused within their family in order to uphold the perception within society? How many? A lot. And this is
trickles down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Down. Something that you just mentioned, family structure. I think it's interesting to point out that a lot of people, and this is not just the press, this is people I've spoken to, have noted Meghan's family structure in particular as a reason as to why they think she's a bit odd or manipulative. The fact that it was just her mum at the wedding, no siblings, obviously the situation with her dad, the fact that she had all these kind of A-list Hollywood stars and it didn't seem like she had any friends from her childhood and that kind of thing. And I guess it's interesting for me because everyone's trying to really pick apart things to paint a picture of who she is. And whilst there might be something there that is a bit strange, because I suppose everyone at any event would think, more members of your family will be there, all childhood friends. I do agree with that being a bit odd. But maybe when you're famous, things happen with people, friendships change, family dynamics change. I don't know.
Yeah, and my whole thing is, Meghan may be imperfect. She may have bullied people. She may be a narcissist. She may be controlling in points. She may be moody. She may have the dark side, which I think we all have a dark side anyway, right? But obviously, in terms of, I'm trying to say 2 things can be true at once. She can be a social climber, all those different things, but she can also have experienced racism.
Horrible things.
Suicidal thoughts, classism. She can experience these 2 things at once, people. You can't use one to discredit the other. And I think that's what the big problem is. People can't allow 2 things to be true at once. But that's real life, is 2 things are true at once. And it's only the media that create this narrative of good, bad, which everybody follows.
Yeah, 100% agree, and you articulated that really well. I think I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that was really key from the interview, but I just felt overwhelmingly sad, like at first I wasn't even going to watch it, and then I was like, okay, let me just watch it, because as I said at the start, I don't really seek this stuff out. I just knew that it wasn't a good situation on all sides. No one seemed happy about it. and titles being stripped and all this kind of stuff. It hadn't happened in my generation in terms of that happening to royalty. So, you know, it's like, okay, let me watch it. And I just felt so sad. I went in kind of like an open slate, and I suppose happy to hear that they had a moment to really speak their own truth on the situation. Of course, there's going to be an element of sensationalism. It is Oprah, you know, but it was their opportunity, right? So give them that at least. I just felt so sad, like all the stuff that she said.
Yeah, on a human level, yeah.
I just don't understand how no one can, or people who don't have any ounce of empathy. I just, you know, this, as I said, she's pregnant. That's a vulnerable situation. People. But it's this. It's someone's way of life that's under attack. That's what they're seeing. They're seeing this institution which is built into their identity, you know, patriotism, right? And they're seeing that under threat and being disrupted by Meghan. And unfortunately, the way of life, because of the way the media has projected things, is you know, it's disassociated from a lot of things Meghan represents. American, you know, black in there, women having a voice, a bit more of a voice. That questioning things.
Yeah, all of those things are not necessarily compatible with what the idea of who we are is. And the idea of who we are is more powerful than the reality. The idea of who we are is rooted in nostalgia rather than evolving. So there's
But nostalgia
resistance.
sometimes isn't real, and nostalgia over time can soften things and almost, it's like that whole thing of legend, you know, how long it takes the legends to come into fruition, and it's years and years, and salt and pepper will be added to the story, and things will be exaggerated here, things will be softened there. I don't think that everything everyone believes about the royal family is accurate, just because of this whole legendary nostalgic status. And I think even if you don't want to take on board what Meghan has said for whatever reason, based on your own view of her, look at what Harry said, and look at how, like, you could tell him giving that interview was not his natural sort of inclination. You can tell that is not who he is. You can tell he really is not keen on liaising with the press, but he knew it was part of his job. All this kind of stuff historically, literally go and Google it, you'll see him, you know, I hate the press, I hate Britain because of the press, all this kind of stuff. But in that interview, he was sad, like the way he spoke about his dad not calling him at certain points and wanting to build up that relationship with William again, and the way he spoke about the Queen. He obviously loves them, they're his family, but you could tell he was so sad that he had to go through this situation to figure out how the monarchy actually worked. And you know, he said that I think Meghan almost rescued him from aspects of it, and it's obviously been a huge journey for him, but everything seems to come back to the fact that he doesn't want history to repeat itself in terms of his mum. So if someone is literally saying that they are scared of the person they love dying or going through mental health, you know, all these kind of things because of what happened to his mum and the lack of support she got and the way she was portrayed in the media and almost manipulated herself by the press. You know, that whole Martin Bashir interview wasn't what it was played out to be to her. It was basically someone just taking advantage. At least have empathy on that front, you know. The guy, he's not someone who is very open about this stuff, and he literally said that, and you could tell it was hard for him to say that because he's speaking against a family or an institution that he's grown up in and he loves.
And the media, both, because they have a relationship, right? And it's hard to distinguish one from the other.
Yeah.
Because they're all about public perception.
To an extent. But I'm just happy that, you know, when they both spoke about Archie and having the baby, they seemed so just content, you know, and the little video of them on the beach and he's just this little cute toddler running around. And it's like, hey, whatever you think of them, at least they've got their little family and they found some semblance of peace.
Yeah, they found
that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, look, this, as I say, dehumanizing people is how you maintain power. There's no power structure that exists in this world that doesn't dehumanize others in order to maintain it. So the media don't do that. So, you know, Harry's cries for help, deaf ears. basically. Otherwise they wouldn't have left. And then obviously the institution themselves, they dehumanize themselves. They have to, because of the wider institution and their expectations. It's a 1,200-year-old family. So I get that. On a human level, we expect this, but we know that their institution and the media institution, which they're locked into, don't humanize, don't rehumanize. You know, it's, as I say, it's, you want to maintain power, and you know, the power to influence somebody's life. It's just intoxicating, if you know what I'm trying to say, for some people, in terms of, you know, managers that want you to come into the office during coronavirus just because, if you know what I'm trying to say, just because. It's just the power, you know, that job's worth, that line manager over you can be a job's worth, let alone media people who are faceless. This doesn't come back on them whenever they do stuff. I mean, Murdoch's been in the press a little bit, but doesn't really come back on them. So it all comes down to power and control, and, you know, on our level, we can't understand that as such. But what I do, look, I just articulated it, but you know, it's a human thing where power corrupts. What's it? Power corrupts, absolutely. I feel like that's like a verse somewhere.
Absolute power corrupts, isn't it?
Yeah, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So, and there we go. So yeah, I mean, at first, look, I went into that interview feeling like, Meghan, why did you join the mafia? And then complain to HR. Who does that? Because I knew what that institution was, and obviously she didn't do no research, so she definitely put herself in a bear trap. But she's wounded.
American, so she probably just had this sort of charmed view of the royal family, you know. And
that was so silly. But
she said she was naive. It was very naive.
But you put yourself in the racism, mental health, you put yourself there. And then they did what they're supposed to do. That's what they do. But, you know, the good thing is that
she kept saying she thought she'd be protected, didn't she? Because she's Harry's wife.
Yeah, I mean, look, the good thing is Harry got freed from that situation, which wasn't good for his mental health. They have a child, and you know, their relationship. They're going to keep trying. So good luck to them. Just like any relationship, you never know. And this is a new chapter. But, you know, I ain't surprised the institution that's 1,200 years old didn't change itself for Meghan, and I'm not surprised the media, who have increasingly had a big role in this new institution's survival, didn't want to change. I'm not surprised. None of these people have had to answer to anybody for ages. So the lesson is, to anybody out there, do your research, man. Go on Wikipedia or something.
I think that what you're saying is true. Yes, you shouldn't marry into something like that.
You don't understand, or you're not willing to confront. Yeah.
Well, or just something that you know has such a huge heritage and is very much about, you know, putting on the right sort of airs and graces and faces and etiquette. Like, it's clear that there's a script and a standard that needs to be followed, even if you haven't done your research. It's very, very clear, right? But as I say, I think she just had a very charmed and just not
childlike view.
Yeah, childlike. That's a good
Disney
word of everything. But as she was part of it, she obviously learned, hey, these guys are not what I thought, and these guys aren't protecting me like they said they would. You know, she said she didn't read the press. I'm sure she did read the press.
Here and there.
Everyone would, or people would, you'd hear about it from your friends, which she even said. And she said, hey, this is, her friends were telling her this is really bad. She didn't feel protected. And I believe, read in the news that there was an email where she actually asked the royal family or the press function of the royal family again to clear up the story about her and Kate, and they just ignored her. So whilst perhaps she went in naively, she did try to maintain an aspect of control, and she did try to ask them to do things.
Yeah, but you don't have control.
Well, I think this is the thing. She still felt she did at some point.
You never had it. You gave it up. That's what that institution is. You are a puppet. But go on, sorry.
Yeah, it's just.
She tried what was humanly possible. Yeah, she tried what was humanly possible. So yeah, she tried what was humanly possible, but it's a dehumanizing institution, and I hope this has come across clear. That's what that institution is.
You're not allowed to be an individual.
No. And that's crucial to people's identity. So you attack the royal family, you're attacking my way of life and me, especially if you're an outsider. But yeah, that's been Love Uncut. Battery's going to die. It's been our longest episode in a minute. But you know, thank you for watching, everybody that's watched to the end, especially. Definitely like, share and subscribe if you're feeling the vibe. Anything you wanted to add there?
No, just again, let people have their peace. You know, if they're not hurting anyone, just
Well, let them be.
People have their peace.
Yeah.
They have a child here, a child on the way. Just let them have their peace. Whatever your thoughts, you know.
Yeah, as I say, it's a very divided topic, okay?
Divided.
So I don't know which camp you fall into and how you're going to feel about this video, but all the best to all the couples worldwide which are facing all these different pressures.
Everyone, not just couples, you know, everyone.
If you're feeling triggered by any of the themes that have been brought up by Meghan and Harry's situation, definitely seek professional help, because it's a real thing. You know, you can't deny it, and that's why Piers Morgan got fired, because he tried to attack the institutions of mental health and racism. You might hate her, you know what, just even if Meghan was talking about strawberries, he would have hated that, but you got to know where you can step over the mark, or where you can't.
Oh, just divide your personal opinion from that.
Your journalism.
Yeah,
you couldn't. So but yeah, sorry, so that really has been Love Uncut, people, and you know, people are going to be intent on misunderstanding you, but it's none of anybody's business, because they're not that fly on the wall. So just try and be a better person every day, I think. That's all I can try and say. And you know, your flaws doesn't mean that you can be demonized, even though it's a convenient narrative. Lots of people chucking stones from their glass houses. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see you next week at 6 o'clock. We both will.
thank you.